Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.
That's the big voice guy. That means that we're up and rolling. It's another week of Nebraska Preps Postgame, and I am with my guy, the numero uno, Jacob Padilla. Coming off, I don't know what you call it. Maybe kind of how about a mini statement week? Because there was some good statements made, but there's still a lot of football left to go. So, I don't know, just an entertaining day. Did it turn out to be a better Thursday, Friday than you thought?
I think it probably was a little bit more disappointing than I thought, just based on the games that we got to go see and some of the other ones that we were considering, at least, that we thought might end up being good. But there did end up being some good games. Obviously, Creighton Prep and Millard West was one of the best there. I went to your game. I wanted to check you guys out before your schedule lightens up a little bit.
It does. It is going to. After Millard North. I mean, because who knows? They've had a tough schedule. You watch them on film, and we're talking about Millard North. You watch them on film, and there's some snap, there's some pop, there's some good size. They get Quains back. He appears to be healthy after missing 2 games. I mean, so we'll see. But you're right, down the stretch, it will give Omaha West Side, and we'll save that till whenever or maybe never. West Side.
There's some interesting stuff out of that.
There's a lot, and the trajectory. I've kind of hinted at it, and now it's starting to happen. Where, number one, West Side is getting healthy, and that's going to matter because those guys are key contributors, and we've managed to get by up to this point, shuffling and kind of moving pieces. And as you saw, maybe a transition in quarterback.
Yeah. That was pretty impressive. Obviously, you guys were struggling a little bit the first quarter and a half, first few series, and then sophomore Anthony Rizak came in and sparked the team instantly. I think his third play of his drive ripped off a 43-yard scramble. Adds a little different dimension. Later, he had a 37-yard run that set up a field goal just before halftime. Was efficient through the air, passing as well. He just came in and was really impressive, moved the offense. I think they scored almost every possession he was in there taking snaps. Yeah,
it's kind of weird. He was 9 of 12 for 124 and a couple of scores. He was 7 for 78 on the ground rushing. It immediately changes the way that we play offense because now you have to account for QB run game. Yeah. And you're going to have some good receivers with Carter Hogan and Grant Guyette. This week, Caleb will start on offense. I guess it wouldn't be ideal for me because he's going to have to fit in the run game against Millard North. It's a very tall task for our secondary defensively. So I guess now's the week, but I'm not the head coach, so I just go with it.
Well, might have a real quarterback controversy there. Caleb went in there and complete a 40-yard pass on a double pass there. That was a nice little form there.
Yeah, he'd be a good fantasy guy, right? A couple catches, a punt return, and playing good defense. But
got the interception too with the assist from Dom.
Yeah, so that's kind of where you're seeing where we're a little thin, right? So we're waiting for guys like John Mez-Ross to get back. So Dom had to play safety because we had an injury at safety. Then he's got to turn around and play running back. And listen, I'm not telling you that anything that some other schools don't have to deal with. It's just in a position that those guys haven't been in before, right? We'd like to use Caleb Benning on offense. It hasn't come to fruition yet. We're still a little banged up waiting, but I think the balance while we're young is really going to help.
And the good news is you got through some of your toughest games, and now you've got the second half of the season here to get those guys back healthy and get those guys incorporated. So it could be worse.
Yeah. So when you looked at you've seen Bellevue West, you've seen Millard South, you've seen Elkhorn South, you've seen West Side, we've seen Lincoln Southeast,
seen Prep.
How do you slot it so far? How about right now versus what you think could happen, if there's a difference?
Yeah.
Millard South would be one in both polls, regardless.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're one. And then I think in Sauter's poll, Bellevue West inched back ahead of you guys this week.
Which is totally fair.
Coming off a 49-13.
That was impressive.
Revenge game out at Kearney. And seems like they kind of settled. I think it looked like Daniel Kalen maybe you've got 1 or 2 series, and then they went Luke Johansson the rest
he's
of
gonna
the
be,
way.
yeah.
So kind of settled one in there. Another big LJ Richardson game, and congrats to him on the commitment to Wyoming.
Yeah,
that's a good get for them.
Good get. They've got some offensive guys. TK Barnett now playing in the secondary with Helms
playing on defense. Yeah,
we
talked about it.
That's kind of what they had to do, right?
Yeah.
If they want to be complete, and so, they have some room for growth.
Yeah, and I think you guys are right there. It'll be interesting to see kind of how you guys continue to mesh there with how the quarterback plays out, getting back some of those weapons, being able to play guys where you want to. Obviously, like you've talked about, you guys still have upside because you haven't had everybody playing in their ideal role.
Getting Tommy Connolly back will be key for us, healthy. Trevor Spady, Jamez Ross, John Quell. There's some definite room to grow because those are 4 starters.
Yeah, and you got playmakers on both sides of the ball, and that's what you're looking for when you're looking at those top teams. It's all right, who can make an impact, who can win games with both sides of the ball.
Safe to say we would put Millard South. Is it too much to say they're kind of by themselves?
I think so at this point. They went out and showed it.
I think Millard South there's Millard South. Then there's this next pack chasing them with Bellevue West, West Side. I still put, and they were impressive. You almost went to this game with Elkhorn South and Papio. Elkhorn South kind of sent a little bit of a message. Now, it's what they do, but it's how well they did it. 469 yards on the ground.
Yeah. Cole Ballard, I think, $180 himself. We got some other guys involved. Sorry to hear Ben Warren announce that he's done for the rest of the season.
This remainder of the season.
After getting hurt in week 1, I think it was. So that's tough for them. But they've got some guys kind of stepping up and filling in. And obviously Ballard, if you're losing one of your main ball carriers, it's pretty nice to have another guy like Ballard right in there to step right in who's every bit the starter.
And I think stylistically, I guess more emotionally, not a great matchup for Papio defensively, right? Elkhorn South is 3D, kind of plays in your kitchen downhill. And Papio couldn't really withstand up front, right, at the line of scrimmage. Just couldn't win that battle.
And that was 45-14 on the final score on that one. So, yeah, impressive for Elkhorn South. They're now 4-1, bouncing back from that
lost to the best team in the state.
Yeah, Millard South. So coming out of that game, I was like, this didn't look too good. Now, the further we get away from that, the more it's like, well, maybe Millard South is just that good. Again, another this week for Gage Stenger. Had 15 for 21 for 264 and 2 scores through the air, 12 carries for 77 yards and 3 more scores on the ground. And then Jake Gassaway caught 7 passes, 131 yards on offense, and 14 tackles, including 3 for loss on defense, plus a forced fumble and recovery.
He has, it's weird, right? You're coaching at another school, but there's obviously lots of relationships that I've forged up until now and kids that I've coached. And I have to say, full disclosure, he has been really, it's been neat to watch him grow and blossom, right? Having coached him when he was much, much younger, didn't say a lot, really unselfish, really unassuming. There was a lot in there. You were just kind of waiting for it to be unleashed. It's kind of cool to see him really start to grow and embrace the fact that he was a budding superstar. He's a budding superstar then, and he's continued that ascent now. He's been a good story to watch.
Yeah, and so again, I think that top tier is pretty solid. Obviously Millard South, and then Bellevue West, West Side in some order, and then big one this week for Gretna, big one this week for Prep. I think and then Elkhorn South obviously is going to looking to continue to roll here. They're going to Bellevue East, who Gretna just took down 77-0.
Yeah, Gret's had this Scott game circled.
Yeah,
and we'll see how healthy Scott is. Right,
Yeah.
We'll see who takes snaps at quarterback. I don't believe it'll be Caden Becker, so that's going to be interesting to watch them. And I think the thing that people better understand about Gretna, and we'll talk to Coach Kale on Friday, physically, that's a tougher foot. They're not just spread Gretna. Like, there's a degree of toughness to them that I think folks better figure out in a hurry.
Well, and that's 77. They didn't. I think Flores threw 10 passes. Yeah. They had like 10 different guys run the ball last week. So that wasn't necessarily them just airing it out trying to run up the score. That was just them doing kind of whatever they were doing was working for them against the Chieftains.
So what do we make of, and it was a fantastic game with Prep and Millard West, a 28-21 final. Two teams that want to do some of the same things, play with physicality up front and run the football with really good efficiency, take your shots in the passing game when opportunity presents itself. But safe to say we maybe, and by we I mean Omaha West Side, caught a break getting Prep early.
Yeah, and it seemed this week – man, they really leaned into the Sharmar Brown experience. Obviously, they've been splitting a lot of time with between him, Stessman, and then the fullback with Egan. Brown shouldered the load this week or last week. 32 carries for 250 yards, two touchdowns.
He's a man.
And then caught the game-winning 37-yard touchdown. That was awfully impressive performance, and especially because Millard West was up 14-0 in that game, I believe. Prep battled back to get it tied. Millard West had the lead late, and then Brown went down and scored there. And it wasn't the cleanest game offensively. They had some turnovers there, but Brown stepped up when they needed him most, and they went out and made a play at the end.
Safe to say the most surprising score was in Lincoln, right? It's hard to describe what's going on with Lincoln Southeast, but they may be in a little bit of trouble. 47-10 final, and the way that Lincoln East did it, I'm not sure what to make of that.
No,
I mean, he picked up where he left off. He's amassed almost 900 yards in 2 weeks, and we're talking about Noah Walters.
Yeah, it's 23 for 29 for 430 yards and 5 touchdowns. Like, that is crazy. Again,
he's just so good. I mean, because we've had some common opponents, so we watch them ahead of time when we're seeing them on Huddle. He's asked to do a ton.
Yeah. Well, and
sprint out the QB run game to some degree. I mean,
he picked up the 18 yards on 3 carries, so it wasn't like he's standing back there just waiting for guys to get open, although he did plenty of that too. I mean, again, Billy Stevenson, 5 for $117 in the score. Cooper Erickson, 8 for 109 in the score. Malachi Coleman, 2 catches, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns.
So for Stevenson in the last 2 weeks, that's roughly 9 or 10 for over 300.
Yeah,
right.
That's not bad. Man,
I'm trying to do the math in my head. Whatever 180 and one's.
So Stevenson had 5 for 103 and 2 scores last week.
Okay,
and
so
Erickson had 4 for $159.
So that's 10
scores.
For almost 300 in the last 2 weeks for Stevenson, right? They're getting it going at the right time, and the bigger concern for Coach Gatula and those guys is, yes, they have to get healthy. But who are they up front? I thought they lacked a lot of physicality up front, which kind of surprised me.
Well, and they're really struggling to get Max Butenbach going, and he was a guy that and they weren't blowing anybody away. They were grinding these games out early in the year. They were just handing it off 30 times a game to Butenbach. He was getting you 4.5 yards a carry. Now he's back down to about 3 yards a carry. They are struggling to get him going. And he's just not finding any.
I don't know how healthy he is.
That could be part of it as well, but
he's
also
gamer.
not finding holes.
Right? Yeah. I mean, they're really getting it taken to them up front, which is a little surprising because I thought, especially going into the season, they would be a lot like Elkhorn South, right? That was a team that it was predicated on toughness, running the football, and stopping the run up front. But the last couple of weeks have been shocking for, I think, what was going to be a good Southeast bunch, at least on paper.
And they couldn't get Jake Applegate involved at all. He only had 2 catches in that game, at least against Creighton Prep last week. Like, they fed him the ball a lot.
Yeah.
It didn't end up.
I think he ended up with 8 catches and more than that in terms of targets.
Over 100, had their only touchdown, and had some really nice, impressive plays, especially after the catch in that game. Only 2 catches in this game. He went and 11 tackles, I think, on defense. So he was getting involved as best he could. But, they got to find a way to get their best players. That's Butenbach and Applegate. They got to get those guys going on offense. I got to find some way to create openings, to create opportunities for these guys to go make plays, because if not, they're in trouble.
Yeah. And so when you're kind of looking at the middle of the pack, if we have Millard South, and I believe we both agree that they're in their own neighborhood, right? Then we have the usual suspects, Bellevue West, West Side, Creighton Prep, Elkhorn South, kind of in that next tier. Is East at the head of the pack, or maybe Gretna is in the middle of the pack of those teams that have the best chance to move up? Kind of how do you sort through that?
Yeah, both of them had pretty good games this week. I'm hoping for good weather.
Maybe not Friday night. We'll see.
I want to get down to Lincoln on Thursday for that Lincoln East Millard West game.
And the rain starts tomorrow, right?
I haven't seen. I saw chance of storms. Hopefully it holds off during game time. Can get a good game in there. I'd like to go down and see that one because I haven't seen either team yet. That'll be a good one for East there to kind of continue to prove themselves and show that hey, that early loss was kind of not who we are. We've bounced back from that, kind of addressed some things, and on a roll now. So I like that upside. We'll see. Kind of Gretna's in the same place.
Tougher schedule, or you think Millard West is fighting Millard North for toughest schedule, right? Because all Millard West gets for their troubles after coming off the prep game is to travel. Well, actually, they have Lincoln at home, right? Or is
it's at East?
That's at Lincoln, so that's going to be at Sechrist.
Yep.
Let me just read you Millard West's schedule for those of you playing at home. When I tell you that they played the toughest, I believe the toughest schedule in the state. They opened with Elkhorn South. They played Millard North in a rivalry game. They had Millard South, then Kearney, then Prep, now Lincoln East.
It's pretty tough.
It's tough. That's a tough schedule. So you try not to make any sweeping judgments when you look at record, but you look at a 2-3 Millard West team, and they may be thinking, Jacob, why are you in such a hurry to get down to Sechrist to watch this Thursday night game? Millard West will give you all you want.
Yeah, and we just saw that last week. I mean, they had Prep on the ropes, and Prep continues to find ways to win. Again, we talked about kind of the way they pulled that one out late, but Millard West was right in that right to the end, and they had the ball last. They weren't able to move it well enough to really threaten, but that's all you can ask for, with a chance to win at the end against a top 5, top 6 type of team.
In your opinion, what's the litmus test, or maybe they've already passed it, for Gretna? What would you like to see for confirmation? Because my gut says it won't come against Scott. I think they have the opportunity to do a number on Scott.
Yeah, and that's kind of just kind of looking at their schedule here. That's kind of the question is that Scott one just kind of coming into the year was looking really interesting. I saw that game last year, and that was a really good game last year. But if Scott's kind of not at full strength,
they may be licking their wounds a little bit.
See. All right, so left we've got Southeast, Papio. Yeah, man, Gretna doesn't quite face any of the other top teams there. They don't face another top 5 team.
Could we learn a little with Lincoln Southeast next week?
Well,
actually, that's the 15th, so they've got one in between. They've got a week off.
Yeah, wow.
How about that?
Yeah, so that's a tricky end to the year, but also with the way those teams are playing and the way the results, I don't know that if Gretna goes out and wins those games against Southeast and Papio that we'll have learned anything too much that we didn't already expect.
Yeah, it could be a 9-0.
Yes.
Could be a 9-0 Gretna Dragons bunch
without facing another top 5 or so team.
And their best win would be probably against currently Lincoln Southeast, right? If they ran the table, because they finished with Southeast and Papillion.
Yeah, Papio South, Scott, Southeast and Papillion. Those are probably the 4 toughest teams they'll face this year.
So probably the toughest team to cap.
Yeah, I think so, especially, again, when we see West Side, they didn't play Millard South or Bellevue West, but they faced some tougher teams, I think, had a little tougher schedule. Millard South and Bellevue West obviously played each other. Millard South played Elkhorn South.
And Millard West.
Yeah. Prep beat Millard West. They handled Lincoln Southeast. They'll get another chance for a good win against North Platte this week. That should be a fun one.
Yeah, and North Platte only has the one loss, right? Yep. That's a 4-1 North Platte bunch.
Coming off a 37-14 win at Northeast. Ran for 342 yards on 51 carries in that game. Threw 3 passes. I guess they just got bored.
Yeah, so Burke may, for all intents and purposes, not the football team, but the school, and we'll get to the football team in a minute, because they may be in that next tier that we're talking about. North Platte traveling to prep may be a good one on Friday night.
Yeah, for sure. And if I didn't have volleyball responsibilities, that's probably the one that I'd be looking at going to. But I'm going to be down at the Devaney Center. So
what do we make of where prep plays their home games? How about that school by name? How about Burke? Right? Again, a team that I think has room to grow because they're playing some young guys in key spots. And listen, especially at the quarterback spot, he's progressively getting better. And Cooper Katsky.
Yeah. And they've got a good running back they can lean on. Dominic Hum, obviously. Donovan Moody.
We think I'm the same way. I think Dominic Hum. We dabble in hoops.
Yeah.
Miller West, and then Donovan Moody, who's another good basketball player in his own right.
Don't know where that came from.
But I tell you what, he is hard to handle in space.
He's really shifty.
Tell you what, I was just getting ready to say, I'd like to take a look at his yards after contact.
Yeah.
For his diminutive size, he's a lot like his dad, Keith Moody, who was maybe a better high school football player than he was a basketball player, even though he gets a lot of basketball accolades to former Nebraska star. Equally as good in high school, too. Another guy that's small in stature but highly competitive.
And playing behind a young line that's kind of learning as they go. You've got a freshman starting along there, and basically nobody had played varsity ball on that line until this year. I talked to them after week 1, and they had 3 players that had played varsity snaps coming into this season.
Yeah, another reason why recruiting is an inexact science, right? Just imagine a Starks who's playing wide out for Burke and a Moody. It's hard to appreciate unless your attention is drawn to them. You put them on maybe some teams that have been in the paper a lot more. The recruiting probably goes a little bit different because those are 2 really good players playing for a team right now that everybody's kind of like, well, I think they're good. Are they good? They didn't play last year, so we didn't get a chance to get our database built correctly. Like, kind of a tough break, but not so much in terms of if you look at it as an opportunity for them to continue to grow out and grow their stock.
Yeah, and since kind of that opening game humbling against Bellevue West, and it was kind of
which they'd like to have over again.
Yeah, it's kind of like a welcome to varsity football moment for most of those guys. And Coach Lamanji's
shaky second quarter, right?
Yeah, Coach Lamanji's message after that was just all about toughness and what it's going to take to compete at that level. Because again, none of those guys had ever done it before, and since then, 4 wins, getting on a roll. They get a chance here against a tricky but banged up Papio South squad coming up here this week. So good to see that them be able to put it together like this to this point, considering, again, everything they went through.
Kind of carrying the banner for OPS schools. Yes. Again, another really good half of football from Omaha North.
Just couldn't sustain it.
It's just tough, right, from a depth standpoint. The younger program was kind of decimated due to COVID and not playing football last year. Just haven't had a chance to rack up the depth. It's arguably, listen, they led Southeast at the half. They led us at Omaha West Side. They were
14-14 against Millard South, right?
Tied against Millard South at the half. Yet they have no wins to show for it. I mean, you talk about it's a cruel sport. It's humbling.
And Omaha Central is kind of struggling as well. kind of the same deal where
they show you flashes. Yeah. Although the last couple of weeks offensively, I'm curious who Central wants to be.
Yeah.
Who is that football team on the offensive side of the ball? Defensively, I think I have a good idea, but the ability to not have without the vertical passing threat, it's really hard to make a living.
Yeah, and when they've won, it's been because they've been able to really pound the ball. And you look at all their losses, they have not been able to find any running room. And part of that's the vertical passing game, and then part of it could be kind of the depth and experience on the line. Talked about just the depth overall and being able to maintain effort for a full game. It's kind of what all these OPS schools are run into. And again, it's good to see that Burke has been able to kind of overcome that.
Let's jump over to B before we get to touch on C1, 2 to close this out. I know my okay. That's the score that lets me know that I think they're pretty good. Did you have one of those in B?
Scanning over the scores real quick, pretty.
You got Scottsbluff, GI Northwest. You got Plattsmouth sending a message to Crete. Scott Elkhorn North. Roncalli, Gross went back and forth. Lexington and McCook didn't play baseball. That 8-5 was a real final.
How's that even possible?
How about this? You go just down the road to the Orange.
That's what I was looking at. 35-21, Beatrice over Norris.
It's a good win.
Yeah, and now Beatrice is 5-0.
Because I think going in, we kind of touched on them last week. I think people thought, little Maryland Eye looks a little archaic. They're struggling to pull out these wins, some close games. They had a safety a couple weeks ago. Beatrice appears to be for real.
How about this? Deegan Nelson, 35 carries for 263 yards and 3 touchdowns.
I think he rested okay on Saturday.
That'll get it done.
That's pretty workmanlike, right?
Yeah. And obviously Norris is now at 2-3. They've played as tough a schedule as
brutal
anybody.
Schedule.
But Beatrice has another tough one coming up, as does Norris. But Beatrice will get another chance to prove itself to show that, hey, that 5-0 is no fluke. They're going to play at Waverly on Friday. So that Beatrice, I think their schedule worked out pretty well for them. They're able to kind of figure some things out, figure out who they were in the first few weeks, and now they're starting to take on some of the tougher teams in Class B. And
how would you like this? So Beatrice has this Friday. They've got Waverly, who will give them all they want. Then they go to Seward, then Plattsmouth.
Another 5-0 team in Seward.
And you got Seward at 5-0. You have Plattsmouth undefeated, and then Crete. So something will give there with Beatrice.
Yeah, they've got a chance to really prove themselves, to show that we kind of haven't really talked about them in that top 5-6 tier. Now they've got a chance to go prove that, hey, we belong in this discussion as well.
It's kind of slot that. Let's go back and revisit Class B, right? Do we agree that it is Bennington and then Plattsmouth?
Yes.
Okay, who's 3?
Whew. Pick a name out of a hat there after that.
So is it between Elkhorn, Aurora, and Beatrice, or is Beatrice not there yet, and nor is Aurora? Do we just put Elkhorn at 3?
Yeah, at 5-0, kind of reigning chance coming off 34-6 win over Ralston. I still don't know that you're wowed necessarily.
We keep saying that, and they keep winning.
They're 5-0, and you've got to give credit to that. And because I think in Sauter's Coaches Bowl, Scott is still at 4-1, is still the number 3 there, coming off the 32-21 win against Elkhorn North. You talked about kind of how they're banged up. They got the game going against against Gretna on Friday, so that's a big
which
one
I
for
won't
them.
hold against them in terms of they will have their hands full and then some with Gretna. And believe me when I tell you, Gretna's waiting on those guys.
Yeah, there aren't many other teams. I know Aurora took on North Platte. There aren't many teams that jump up a class, particularly play a really good team in Class A. So yeah, that's I think that's more of a chance to really prove themselves. And like, hey, no, we deserve this spot, as opposed to if they lose it, well. It's not going to cost them down in Class B. I won't hold it against them either. But, yeah, Waverly kind of, again, still working through the injuries.
Tough schedule.
And kind of figuring some things out with their running game, who's going to tote the rock there. And then Aurora, tough start, bounce back, 3-2 now, 48-7 win over York. Carlos Collazo, 17 carries for 126 yards and 6 touchdowns. Pretty efficient day.
Yeah.
I think you could take any. I could see that kind of those three kind of ending up in any order coming out of this next week. Those 3 or 4, really.
Yeah, Bennington will have a chance to continue to get healthy. They got South Sioux. Then they got a toughie on the 8th against Elkhorn, which I guess will probably tell us a lot about Elkhorn, right? But then they close with Roncalli and Gross. Plattsmouth finishes with a tough schedule, I believe. They've got Beatrice and they finish with Waverly. They've got 3 in a row there. I think games 6, 7, and 8 for Plattsmouth, I think, will validate or vindicate. But remember, this is the same team in the playoffs a year ago that held their own against Bennington, and then some in a win. So I'm a believer in Plattsmouth. I know some people say they haven't played the upper echelon in Class B. They will, and it'll sort itself out. But I'm a believer in Plattsmouth. I don't have any problems putting them at 2.
Yeah, Christian Meneses, just another 16 carries, 156 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
Just another day at the office.
Yeah, and light work for him considering only 16 carries. So that's good for him. Bennington, it really seems like Trey Bird is kind of settling in at quarterback now. Obviously, his brother was the starter last year. And he was a big-time playmaker. They had kind of the battle early on. They had injuries there, and Trey ended up getting the job. And he's just been really efficient, taking whatever opportunities are there. 13 for 16 for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers last week. Mostic, 130 and a score on 17 carries, and they were able to spread it around.
It's a light night's work for him with only 17 carries.
Yeah, and that's probably a good thing at this point in the year with
try to recuperate. Yeah.
Probably worth mentioning before we kind of get out here, down in Class C1, upset knocked off Boone Central, knocked off number 1 Pierce, handed them their first loss, and really impressive performance by Boone Central quarterback Alex Cristo. Threw for 175 and 2 scores, carried the ball 20 times for 124 yards and a touchdown.
Their versatility was the difference. The fact that he's dual threat. They've got a chance now, and I'm not throwing dirt on Pierce or anybody else, but I'm used to doing Boone in the state finals. Yeah. I didn't think they would get there this year, but they're like, not so fast. A lot of winning pedigree. Don't count us out.
35-33 win there, so you got Ashland Greenwood, Boone Central, kind of top Sawdust Bowl at 5-0 each.
Usual suspects. That's complete, and it was fast. The 30 minutes goes quick. That's my main man, Jacob Padilla. I'm ODB. We'll be back next week with Nebraska Preps Postgame.
Nebraska Preps Postgame with Damon Benning and Jacob Padilla.